Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon, The Non-Compliant Child. I'm Liz Simpson, and today with me, as often I do, John Willson, our Executive Director at SOAR. So we're excited to see you this afternoon. We're going to give everybody just a teeny minute to get on, and then we're going to go from there.
We are really excited to be sharing these webinars with all of you and be a part of what's happening in your lives. You know, as Liz will probably mention later, if you've got questions or you want to chat, you know, you can certainly use those features in Zoom. But we are thinking about you. We are you, and love that you're coming. While we wait, I'll tell a quick funny story.
Absolutely. Things I'm going to go real quick once we give everybody. Okay.
So while we're waiting, here's just a kind of a funny story. At the Willson house, we are absolutely seeing the greatest benefit that has come out of this is the kids are invested in doing more. They're actually participating. And every time I come home, you know, the kitchen is clean, the living room is clean. They recognize that, that the expectations are increased. And, you know, if you're like me, you've not had your kids do enough in life. I've done more for them than I should have, and as my wife has as well. And so we are, you know, teaching our kids how to do laundry. They're participating in the cooking. The other night, my daughter baked, she did a little baking competition with herself, and she baked cookies from scratch, and she baked Toll House cookies, and they were both delicious. The cookies that she baked were really more like cookie muffins because they rose a little bit more than she had expected them to. But we're having fun at the Willson household, doing what we can to keep this process moving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a wonderful time to get to know your kids better, to have fun with your kids, and to practice some new skills. And hopefully today we'll be able to give you some new skills to practice. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, I have a little housekeeping to happen here to start with. We've got a chat box. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you kind of scroll along the bottom of your screen and you'll see a box that says chat, and you can ask us questions there and we'll get you an answer as soon as we possibly can. We also have a question and answer at the end. So anything you put in the chat box, if we don't address it as we're going, we will go ahead and address it at the end. And there's in the Q&A, there's a Q&A feature as well. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand there. And at the end, we can turn on your mic and you can ask that question out loud and we can answer it. This one, please contact me at liz@soarnc.org. And I also want to let you know that we are posting all of our webinars on our website at soarnc.org, just like the back of my email address. And then you just put a /webinars and another /. And we'll put that in the chat box. Maybe John can put that in the chat box for where you can find that in the future. So let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about, and I know we don't need a whole lot of review on, is the nature of your child and some of the ways that ADHD and LD will manifest. And of course, that is, you know, impulsivity, poor organizational skills. They're a little hyper, can be more hyper than others. They're highly sensitive kids, which is lovely. I love that about them. Poor social skills, poor time management skills, poor emotional control, highly anxious, and they lack a little bit of self-control here and there. So if any of that looks familiar to you, you are probably at the right webinar. On the other hand, your kids have a lot of strengths, and we're going to talk about that as we go through. But this is an important list to kind of review because this is how sometimes our kids are defined in the world, and that makes a difference going forward. So stay with me for a second. It sometimes can be the basis of non-compliance, and that's our whole discussion today, is about compliance and non-compliance. And if I have a low self-esteem, you know, because I feel like I've never done anything right, or I always get it wrong, or whatever, when you ask me to do something, I'm not necessarily compelled to give it a shot. Also, I have a lot of anxiety. There have been things I have tried to do in the past that just haven't worked out the way I thought they should. And that causes me some anxiety. And those two things, combined with everything else, will sometimes lead to a fixed mindset. Okay, and I want to talk about mindset. We have a great webinar on mindset on our website under our webinar catalog. But I also want to talk about it here today because it again has a lot to do with compliance. And so our mindset is our established set of attitudes that we hold.
Hey, Liz, hold up 1 second, if you would. If other folks in the chat could, is anybody else having trouble hearing Liz, or is it just me? So if somebody could raise their hand or indicate in the chat if that's happening, we just want to know so that people can get the okay. All right, so it's just me. All right, great. Go ahead. Sorry, Liz.
Okay, so our mindset, it's learned when we start to begin to think that anything that we try is not going to be particularly successful. That leads to a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is when we try something, we learn from the experience. We're not necessarily successful, but we learn from the experience, and then we go, wow, I want to try that again, or let me try it a different way. That's a growth mindset. So our kids have developed a mindset over time, and it affects us. So again, a growth mindset embraces challenges, a fixed mindset avoids challenges. A growth mindset sees effort as a path to mastery. A fixed mindset gives up easily. Again, I said this was learned, and that the best example is the example of the elephant trainer. Elephant trainers, when an elephant is very small, will tie them with a fairly large rope to a stake. And when the elephant is very small, he can't pull off. He's stuck to the stake. He realizes he's stuck. He's tried and tried, can't get loose. As he grows, they start making the rope much smaller, much smaller, till it could almost be a thread. And the elephant still will not move. He's tried and tried and tried and failed. And so therefore that leads to a fixed mindset. Even when he can move forward, he doesn't, because over time he's learned he can't. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind when we're thinking about our kids and what might make them non-compliant when we ask them to do something that we think is very simple and very straightforward. Okay. This is from Carol Dweck, who did all the mindset studies. And she says, when we temporarily put people in a fixed mindset with this focus on permanent traits, and I'm going to talk about that just in a minute, they quickly fear challenge and devalue effort, of anxiety and depression. And when we change from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, the positive consequences, when we're able to move ourselves out of that fixed mindset into a growth mindset, the positive consequence affects our physical, mental health, success attributes, and happiness. So as we go forward in this webinar, talking about how to move your child from non-compliance to compliance, we're also going to be working on how to change their mindset from a fixed mindset to a more growth mindset. Both of those things are going to happen in this webinar today. So stay with me. Here's what happens when you have a kid with a fixed mindset who feels like because of their ADHD, it never works out for me, nothing ever works. Here's what they say when you ask them to do a simple chore. Well, I don't know, if you want it done, you do it. And what they're doing is masking their feeling of incompetence, okay? So they're deflecting the responsibility to you, and that lowers their anxiety, okay? Because they're anxious when you ask them to do something. Or they'll say, I'll do it later, or they'll just say, okay, I'll do it. And then that lowers the pressure because you're going to walk away, and it also lowers their anxiety, okay? Or they'll say, I did it already. But when they say, I did it already, when they say, I did it already, well, this isn't really done. You've made an attempt here, but this ain't gonna work. And that lowers their self-esteem, okay? So Carol Dweck says they don't like effort. They feel that if you had that ability, you wouldn't need the effort to do it. So they deflect because they don't feel like they have what it takes to get the job done, okay? So I want you to think about this. Carol Dweck says we come to these ideas about our mindset because we think that these are fixed characteristics. I will never learn how to be organized. I will never know how to have good social skills. It's not in me. It's not who I am. If you feel that way, then you have a fixed mindset. But I'm here to tell you, as a learning specialist, these kids can learn all of these skills. It just takes effort, it takes time, it takes focus, and they can learn it. They have a lot of positive traits. This is a challenge list. We can fix this and make it much less in their way. And therefore, they'll be much more compliant and more helpful. So when you looked at this list to start with, I want to know whether you thought these were permanent traits, because they're not. They are propensities, but they're not permanent traits. We can learn how to have more self-control, how to be less anxious, and so forth. Okay, so something to think about. And the other thing I want you to think about is, where are my kids going to understand that these are not permanent traits and that they have a lot of growth and learning they can do, and success is within their grasp? They're going to learn it from you. You are the child's mirror. If you believe they can, they will believe they can. So as we're asking them to be compliant and to join us in this time where we're all stuck together in the house and we need to work together, you're going to have to watch your what you're presenting to your child, okay? Because they're reading you all the time. Highly anxious people are reading the landscape all the time. So they're reading your body language, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your attention, and your respect for their efforts and how you support their choices. They're looking for that all the time. So when you come in and say, you know, this room is a disaster, you know, what they're hearing is, you don't think I can do it, you think I'm a mess, you know, all of that. You're just reinforcing that low self-esteem. Let's don't do that. We're going to find different ways today. So how do you want your child to see themselves? These are words that are often associated with ADHD and LD. Distractible, oversensitive, perseverating, disorganized. These are the tapes that our kids play in their head. And it's not real helpful. It's not real motivating. Or do you want to see them to see them?
Go back one slide, Liz.
Sure.
So when we created this years ago, the fun thing that we recognize about our kids is that sometimes hidden within some of these things, are they distractible, oversensitive? You know, do they perseverate? Do they get stuck on something and then not get off? Is, you know, their room's a mess? It really can become, you know, there are hidden strengths within inside that. For, you know, I'm just going to take one as a quick example and then let you move on. We had a young man who would just get stuck on one train of thought and couldn't let it go. In fact, when he found out that I too really enjoyed tying knots a different way, he wouldn't leave me alone about it. In fact, one night at 3 o'clock in the morning, he unzipped my tent and he shone his light into my eyes and said, Big John, look at this new knot I invented. I rubbed the light, the dust out of my eyes. I looked at him and I said, Colin, go build me a hammock. And bless his heart, he spent the rest of the summer building me this tiny little hammock using knots. And it was something that we communicated and talked with over the years. He has since gone on to become one of the most remarkable potters I know, because he will invest so fully in what he's doing that it's just quite extraordinary. There are these wonderful strengths that our kids have that are hidden inside some of these traits. And the last one here says manipulator. How would you define manipulation? And I'm sure those of you would say that manipulation is the way to get others to do what you want them to do. So now Liz is going to switch to the list and see these are some of the strengths that are associated with those challenge areas. So instead of being someone who's impulsive, we're a multitasker. We're intuitive. We're ultra focused. We demonstrate flexibility. We're creative. We require deadlines. Structured. We're tenacious, and the seeds of leadership exist in these kids. And so I think it's just so important to recognize that it's not one or the other. They live together with both. And the more time we can spend nurturing the second list, the better our kids will start to see themselves in remarkable ways.
And that's my point exactly. It moved from the one list to the other. You're the guide. You're the guide in that. So beautiful, John. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And this is just a picture that I love that really demonstrates helping your child seeing themselves as somebody who can't do it or doesn't have the capability to seeing all the strength and all the power within them.
So what's unique about this is, our kids are constantly getting the message that they aren't enough, that they can't. And, exactly. And if you want to ensure that you are creating and nurturing, the dynamic child inside, it's really important that you help them see that lion, because if they believe that you believe that's what's wonderful about them, they're very much going to start to adopt that mindset. And, as Liz mentioned, mindsets are just so deeply critical to how our kids begin to view themselves. And then ask yourself this: if you see yourself as the lion, are you not more motivated to conquer your jungle? But if you see yourself as the kid who can't, then what is it you really want to do that day? Next to nothing. And so from a standpoint of motivation, if we are trying to create opportunities for our kids so that they can really understand just how incredible and dynamic and wonderful they are, part of that motivation begins with them beginning to really see themselves that way. And you are the best person to help make that happen. I know for a fact that I am who I am because my parents made a really conscious effort to help me understand my gifts and strengths.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's learned, and you are the teacher. You are the teacher. So how do we help our child find their strengths? And there's several ways, and I know with SOAR, the best way is to ask them, what are your strengths? How do you see your strengths? Because you may be really, really surprised at what they see as their strengths. The other thing I want you to do is observe a child in a variety of them. And so if you observe them in a variety of settings, you will see where they shine. So important. You need to be able to with their own. And then if you want to take a more formal approach, just for fun, y'all can look at learning style strengths or careers and interest aptitudes, or a Gallup Strength Quest. We use that at SOAR here for all of our staff. Or even Facebook fun. What Marvel superhero are you like? Why? You know, Facebook has so many of those things. You know, what's your favorite color? What, you know, who would you be caught on a desert island with, or whatever? That starts the conversation of what you see as your strengths. You know, what Marvel superhero and why? You know, anything that you can do to start talking to your child about their strengths, take that opportunity. And then the other thing that's important on motivation, what is it that they do feel strong in? And that's what they're drawn to. Technology and video games is a place where a lot of kids are very successful. And there's a reason for that. We're going to do another webinar on strictly video games coming up in April. But it's a place where they feel very successful. So they want to spend time there. So they are motivated to do things that that may not be their strength area, if they know the payoff might be a little bit more time on video games. So when I say currency, it's what payoff does your child want to see if you ask them to do something that is not their area of comfort, okay? And sometimes it's just they want to spend more time with you. Sometimes they want to have fun, however they denote fun, whatever fun looks like for that day. Or sometimes it's social time with friends. John, do you have some other ideas about currency?
Yeah, years ago, I found myself working at SOAR as a young staff, hiking the Appalachian Trail with a group of students. And I called in Jonathan. I said, buddy, I just don't know what to do here. And he said, you know, John, something matters to that kid more than anything else. You've got to figure out what it is, you know? And so early on, and for the remainder of that trail, we did discover the thing that mattered the most to young Nathan. And we utilized that in a really clever capacity. And we made sure that he had as much access to it as possible, but we also helped use it as an external locus of control to help manage his behavior. These days, what we're finding with most of our children, it's technology. You know, it's because, you know, and so if technology is in fact your child's currency, which most often it really often is, or at least it's a component of their currency, you know, how you choose to dole that out is really very, very important. You know, so rather than just have it be a given, one of the things that you can do, especially if you're having, you're having trouble with motivation, is that they earn qualitative time with their technology rather than it just be something that you're taking away. Right. And so I recognize that really being clever and creative about trying to determine what is your child's currency. Do they have a favorite toy? Do they have a favorite game with you? Do they have a favorite, something that they love, and then utilizing that in a reward capacity versus utilizing it as something that you're going to take away from them.
And I love that, something that you add as a payoff, basically, rather than something you take away. And we'll talk about that in a minute about consequences. And so when we're teaching cooperation, because cooperation is the opposite of non-compliance, right? So when we're teaching cooperation, you want to think about what motivates your child, what motivates them. And you want to look at what their passions are. And when they do cooperate, what are the circumstances? Because I want you to be, we're going to ask you to be sort of laser focused on the things that your kids are doing right. We want you to catch them cooperating and really, really praise them for that. And and praise them specifically for that. Like, I like the way that you joined in when we were all working on this. That really helped us. You know, be specific, okay? And then, as John said about currency motivators is fairly symbiotic words. We want you to use their motivators, use their passions, and their passions might be watching a movie with you or playing a game, exactly like John said. And assure them that whatever you're asking them to do, whatever you want them to cooperate with you about, that they can do it. They can do it. Okay. So motivation, what are the core pieces of motivation? And I want us to just step back a minute and think about how people become motivated. Okay. And the first way that we become motivated is we become curious. Like, oh, okay, well, what is that? Well, what will I get if I do it? Well, what will happen if I don't do it? Well, what's happening here? Okay, so that's a piece of motivation, important piece of motivation is curiosity. And another important piece is affinity, is the payoff something that I care about? Well, if I do clean up my room and I get, you know, let's say I get, you know, 10 minutes of time on my phone, well, that's not quite enough. I don't think so. You know, if I get 30 minutes on my phone, well, yeah, okay, my phone's important to me. Yeah, I could do that. Relevance, is the job relevant to me? If I ask my child to organize something, I have to also help them understand why organization is important. And I mean, literally help them understand that. Like, well, remember when you lost that other shoe, you couldn't find it, so you didn't have your shoes that you needed for PE or for walking or for whatever. You know, that it's important that we keep our shoes where we know where they are. You know, so you'll have them when you need them.
I'm going to jump in here and tell a quick fun shoe story.
Yeah.
I'm color commentary today. One of the things that are just really critical to us is that kids wear shoes. And the reason is if they don't wear shoes and they're walking barefoot in the grass and they cut their foot, guess what? They can't participate in the activities. And so what do kids love to do? They love to walk barefoot. And so we had to create a motivational way to try and prevent them from having to do that. Now, I'm not recommending doing this at home because your goals and our goals are not necessarily aligned when it comes to wearing of shoes. But this is just an example of how you can create motivation when motivation doesn't exist. All right. So I catch little Tommy, you know, scampering about without shoes on. And I say, Tommy, stop. You got to stand right there. And he's like, why? I said, because you don't have shoes on. He says, well, my shoes are over there. I said, well, you know, see if you can get somebody to bring you your shoes. And so then they start asking their friends to try and bring them their shoes, and they've got to stay in place while I'm watching them until someone is willing to bring them their shoes and they put their shoes on. Guess how often Tommy wants to get stuck in place without his shoes on, waiting for somebody to bring him his shoes. And so sometimes, you know, motivation, you can turn into, and we turn that into a little bit of a game. And certainly, you know, one of us are willing to make sure that Tommy can get his shoes. He's not going to be stuck frozen in place for too long. But the idea there is that you try and make it fun, but you also try and make it very consistent so that if there is going to be some external consequence to, you know, to participating in a behavior, you know, you want to try and make sure that the juice is not worth the squeeze. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, just continue to find creative ways to make sure kids are doing what you need and want them to do is really critical. All right. Thanks, Liz.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That was perfect. Thank you. And then the second thing is need. What need does it meet for me? So if I ask you to come help me clean your room, we need your room cleaned up. And that needs to happen. And either you can come and help me do it, or I'm going to do it. Well, I'm crossing a need right there. They have a need for privacy. They have a need for their own special space. And if I say I'm going to do it, then they lose all of that. So it meets their need of independence if they're going to join me or if they're going to do it themselves. Need for independence is a strong need. And so you always want to include that in what you're asking is what need this meets for them. And again, for teenagers, they want to know that they're going to have some choice and some control over whatever it is they are being asked to do. And that is, when I talk about need, especially with teenagers and strong-willed kids, that's what I mean. They need some choice, and they need to have some independence within that. The last thing is, when you're asking somebody to do something for you or with you, or asking somebody to cooperate, they need to know what they contribute to that, okay? Otherwise, you're going to get the, oh, well, just do it yourself. You know what you want. You know what you're going to do, whatever. And again, that contribution comes from asking in a way that allows them some choice and some independence. So if I say, I need you to clean up your room, and they say, well, I need us to go get some boxes or some Tupperware or whatever, even though I know the Tupperware in there is not used very well, I can say, I will gladly do that. If you'll reorganize the Tupperware you have right now, see what we need, then we can go. Now, they have made a contribution to cleaning up their room. Does that make sense?
Liz, we've got some, Amy has asked, what's the difference between that and bribery? So, when you're providing opportunity versus issuing a consequence. And
okay. Let me answer it real quick. And then I'm gonna let you, because I have a top of the head answer. And the difference is that what you're actually teaching is not bribery. It's delayed gratification. It's patience and persistence. If this, then that. That's a pattern that we see in our lives all day, every day. If I this, then that. If I clean the dishes, then when I want to fill the water bowl for the dogs, it's empty, I can do that. It's if this, then that. So that's my response. And that's a skill we need to learn, is patience and persistence. John.
Well, my take on that is similar, but just a fuzz different. And think about puppies. All right. How do you train a puppy? Now, again, I understand kids aren't puppies, but but you make it fun, and so small children grow into bigger children, and the more fun you can make something, the more you can focus on what someone has earned, then the more successful you're going to be, because there's two schools of thought here. There's the do it, or this is the consequence, all right? And so how well does that motivate you? And in the real world, that can be motivating, because you want to keep your job, but you're not going to fire your kids. Or there's the, hey, let's figure out what you really want, and then figure out a way to get there. And in doing so, you're creating that collaborative opportunity to try and afford somebody the opportunity to move forward. And in all honesty, if you see that as a bribe, okay, I'm going to try and motivate in as many ways as I can, and if providing those successful based opportunities and phrasing things in terms of what the reward is, then that's something that I have found to be much more successful than coming into something based on, we're going to have a conflict about this. There's another question that was just asked. What if you're asking to do, Tim asked, right, what if you're asking to do chores such as yard work that the child doesn't value? And I'm going to answer that one real quick, because my son has to do the chore of yard work, which he was not particularly invested in. And I went a little different route with him on that. You can choose to accept, you bring your own style to that. But so he would come in after doing the weed eating, and we went to the store. We bought him a special weed eater that was a little smaller and he could use. And so there was initial excitement, but that wore off, you know, as it became more work. And so he would come in and say, Dad, will you check? Will you check? I'm done. And of course he wasn't done. So I would go and I'd say, well, no, you missed a spot here. You missed a spot here. You missed a spot here. And so he said, so he'd go out, maybe get those spots, say, okay, Dad, I'm done, and ask me to come and check it again. So finally I said to him, son, I will come out one more time and check. And if the job is not done to my satisfaction, I'm going to add an entire another section of the yard. And I knew that I was going to do that, so I only gave him a small section of the yard to start with so that he could then make a choice as to whether or not he would invest, because he wasn't naturally invested to do so. But his motivation was doing it right in that one small spot so he wouldn't have to do more of it everywhere else. Just one idea to have kids do get invested in chores. Do this, and you won't have to do this bigger job.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I put this cartoon up because you said keep it fun, and I think keeping it fun is critical. And I really relate to this one because my kids have told me don't sing. No, don't sing. We live in Wyoming, so we have to travel great distances, and I turned up the country. It was like, no, Mom. So I know that if I threaten to sing to my kids, they will do anything that I ask them to do, just straight away. So I really enjoy this one as just keeping it fun. So let's look at some strategies. Let's look at some specific strategies that we can use and how those may work for us in our family. So the first thing is to create a full value contract, which includes goals and objectives for the family. You know, so in this family, we're going to keep the house neat. Everybody has their space they're in charge of, and so forth and so on. And we have a fabulous webinar that has already been posted on our website that goes into more about how to build that particular piece of structure. But once you're all on the same page, you sit down and work out how to be all on the same page, then everything else becomes a little bit easier. And there are, of course, some non-negotiables. There are some things that in your family, this is how it goes. There's no, so we speak to each other kindly, we treat each other with respect. You know, there's no cussing if that's a thing for you. And those kinds of things. So that's very important to have down early on. And you all have to hold that line. Natural and logical consequences we're going to talk about here in a minute. And for tweens and teens, include a proposal system. And I borrowed John's proposal system, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the first, to-dos that we can do is to post a daily job board for all members of the family. So everybody knows what their job is. Our kids are very visually important for organizing everything. So posting a daily job board for all members of the family is great, because the other thing that encourages cooperation is when the kids see us following the same structure that we're asking them to follow. Very important. The other thing is to create individual job descriptions for each job. And we do that at SOAR. We have job cards. And I'm going to show you an example of some other job cards that you can use. We have example of our job cards posted again on that webinar site that I mentioned earlier. And then you want to have a spot on the board for checking off who's done what. Again, this is just being able to keep track. Anything our kids can see visually unfolding is much better. They're much better for buy-in.
Just a quick question to everybody. In the chat bar, how many folks are using some type of role card or responsibility card with instructions about roles at home, or they transfer roles? I would love to see what you guys are doing. So in the chat bar, if you'll just indicate if you are doing that, with a yes, no, or an idea about what you're doing. That might be fun. I'll go ahead.
Keep us posted. So, a job card, if you're doing a job card, is a group of jobs, okay? And this will help with non-compliance because it says exactly what you're asking your child to do. Instead of saying, clean your room, Emily, I have told you to clean your room. Please clean your room. Emily doesn't know what that means exactly because she's perfectly happily comfortable in her room, even though there's not room enough for me to walk over to her bedside table. Nothing, no clear floor in there. The dog it can't find his own dog bed. Nothing is happening. So when I say clean your room, she doesn't really get it. If I give her a card that looks like this, or I list out what I mean, then she can do it. Pick your clothes up off the floor and put them in the hamper. Check. Pick up your shoes and put them in the closet. Check. Hang up your clothes you only wore once. Check. Throw away all the trash. Check. So if we can do that for our kids, it will make them much more compliant because they get to just check off the list. And then when you come in, everything's done. Everything you asked them to do is done. You'll be surprised what you should have had on that list that you didn't. And so if they've checked off all their list, praise them. Good job. If they've checked off 5 of them, good job. This is great. This is great. So it looks like you need 5 more minutes. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Let me know. You come get me. So we want to start praising effort as much as we praise completion. It's really important. Back to the mindset. You're not going to like it anyway. Yep. Let me see your effort. Let's go. Okay. I found these on Etsy. These are just, it has different, for your bathroom, for your bedroom, living areas. I thought they were interesting. There's tour cards everywhere as I was sort of scanning around. So your own, or better yet, have your child make their chore card. You tell me what your room's going to look like. You tell me the steps to doing it, because man, that is the best cognitive activity for our kids. What is step 1? What is step 2? What is step 3? Write that down. Tell me what to look for when I come in here. I'll look for it. Okay. The more empowerment we can give our kids, the better.
Hey, Liz, so we had 7 respondents. 5 were doing it all the time or sometimes. 2 were not. And special shout out goes out to Libby Neves, because they are in fact using the Yoda, the chef, and the Captain Planet. So
good.
Roles. So we applaud that effort. And then one of the other ones wrote, Amy wrote that, yes, they'd use them with very specific instructions, including end times. And so that's a SMART goal. This will be accomplished by this time, by this person. Well done, Amy.
Yay, Amy. And that's my next slide is time. Our kids are not good time managers. So we want to pick a time when these things will be completed. So it must be completed before breakfast, dinner, leaving the house, technology time, or make it a specific time. Or once again, let the kids tell you when they'll be finished and hold them accountable. You need to take your ego out of it. If your child said, I'll be finished by 10 o'clock, you go in and you say, wow, help me understand what happened. I hate that you didn't meet your goal. Do you need to revise your goal? How do you want to revise that? So again, empowering them at every opportunity. And then consequences. The time, if at all possible. What are the consequences for my compliance and for my non-compliance, right? So if your job is completed in the allotted amount of time with all the boxes checked, you will be able to fill in the blank, or you will receive fill in the blank, 10 extra minutes or 20 minutes or whatever on technology. If your job is not completed in the allotted time with all the boxes checked, you will not be able to again, fill in the blank, or you will not receive, again, fill in the blank, or as John's example was earlier, you will also get to do fill in the blank, you know. So those are some tools for you to look at when you're going. I want to talk a little bit about consequences. And one of the main important things about consequences, positive and negative consequences in advance within the family guidelines is great, but establish them in advance, because if you don't, your knee-jerk consequence may not be enforceable, right? You don't want to ever give a consequence that you aren't prepared to follow through with. So if you agree on the consequence ahead of time, that's going to take that sort of wild card out of there. Never threaten something that you aren't prepared to follow through with. I have been touting that forever back when I was teaching teachers. Teachers sometimes do that as well. But yeah, it's one for parents absolutely have to remember, because otherwise the kids will say, well, she didn't mean that. I'll just keep moving. Okay. So whatever you say the consequences are, you have to hold that line. It's important. Otherwise, they can do what they want, and they will. Okay. Use natural or logical consequences every opportunity you get. Natural consequences are when you don't have your shoes and you're walking barefoot and you step on something. That's the natural consequence of not having your shoes, right? Logical consequences are consequences that are associated with the event, but might not be, the actual natural consequence. And for SOAR, we often use if you're putting down somebody, then you have to give them 3 ups. That's a good example. Yeah. John, any other unnatural, or we're going to do another webinar on this topic actually on Tuesday, but do you have a brief example?
I do. The more a consequence can fit the situation, the better off you are. And I'm going to use the example of my son and his bicycle. So if my son leaves the bicycle outside and it rains, what's going to happen to the chain? Well, it's going to rust. If he leaves it outside and it doesn't rain, somebody might steal it. Those are natural consequences. But if he leaves it outside, overnight, and I'm the one who has to put it away, a logical consequence of that would be, you've lost use of the bike for a period of, a day or 2 days, or you have to spend some time and energy working on cleaning the bike, maybe oiling the chain, turn into an experience with Dad, so that we help, my son see it as something valuable, and that becomes a logical consequence. If I tell him that he's grounded for a week and can't play with his friends because he left his bike outside yet again, there is no natural flow to that, no logical flow to that, and that simply becomes a punishment. And so, whenever you're trying to come up and be creative with consequences, I think it's really critical to have them have some type of link. With my kids at a very early age, and also with all the participants here at SOAR, we have them actually participate in helping determine the consequences for themselves, and we maintain veto power if they say things that are absurd. Like I was ugly to someone, so I'll do 15 push-ups. Well, no, that there's no logical flow to that, and that's too punitive, and so come up with another one. And often they'll say something like, okay, well, I'll say 3 nice things about them. That they put them down, so they're going to put them up. Or if they say a filthy word, then they've got to come up with 5 clever alternatives for that filthy word.
Right.
Again, anytime you can have that consequence be something that is logical and connected to what happened, then it's going to be much more powerful.
Beautiful. That's perfect. And again, we're going to have a webinar on this topic of natural and logical consequences on Tuesday, and I'll get that out in the mail probably this evening or tomorrow. So just keep your eyes open for that.
So quick thing here. We've got another question about natural consequences. What do you do when they impact the entire family? You know, if my son doesn't have shoes and he can't walk as far, or we have to listen to him complaining. And so, great question, because we deal with that all the time at SOAR. You know, you want to make sure that if there's been a challenge and a consequence is necessary, it's not going to impact the entire group. So, you know, you have to be clever and creative about what you're going to tackle, when you're going to tackle it, and what kind of measures you have in place in order to do that. It's much easier when you've got two parents and one can sit back with somebody and kind of work that process. But another one is simply this. You know, Amy, your question about, you know, if your son doesn't have shoes, then he can't walk as far. So the truth is, and we say this to our instructors, if they leave base camp without the necessary gear or the necessary tools for them to be able to do the activity that they're supposed to do, you know, on some level that's the responsibility of the instructors. And one of the ways that we do that is we say, okay, hold up your rain gear, and everybody holds up their rain gear. All right, everybody, you know, give me your extra pair of shoes, and they show their shoes. And you say, all right, I need to see sunscreen and water bottle. And they have their sunscreen and their water bottle. You know, here's my water bottle. And we try and turn as many of these opportunities when we're trying to nurture and encourage and motivate kids to do the things that we want them to do and turn them into a game. But ultimately, you know, our kids are disorganized, they're forgetful, they're impulsive. They have what's called but first disease. That means that they went to go get their shoes from their room, but then they saw the dog and they had to pet the dog, and then they forgot that they were going to go get their shoes. And so we do have to be that external locus of control. And you all know this as well as I do. Our kids take a little more work than other people's kids. And so if we set them up for success by circling back to the expectation that we created, and then, you know, it's believe, but verify.
And John, just doing that, just asking them to hold up their stuff and show that they have it, will work into a habit of mind where when they're walking out of the house as a 20-year-old, they're going to go, wait a minute, keys, purse, you know, phone, okay, you know, they're going to, so you're modeling for them that, and that will over time, and again, it does take more time for our kids, but over time, it will become a habit of mind where they can put those things together.
It is. How many of us, you know, again, a lot of the folks on the call probably are like me, and I'm an adult with ADHD, and I do my little crucifix every day, glasses, wallet, or phone, keys, glasses, wallet, phone, keys, glasses, wallet, phone, keys. So make sure that I've got all my stuff.
Exactly. Well, I know we're kind of running out of time here, so I'm going to go just a little bit quicker. This was just another fun thing, but we do want our kids to be empowered in the future. And so if a child says, you know, I'm not eating any salad, and then you say, okay, fine, no dessert, that's the rule. And then boom, there you go. You got it. You're empowered. Don't eat that salad, but don't eat the dessert either. There you go. So I thought that was a fun one. So some of the main things I want you to take away is expect and allow for a little performance and consistency. You have to be the consistent one, and they're going to come up to that level. They're going to come up as long as you praise them for effort, for their strengths, for being there, and for showing up. You've got to praise them, and then their mind's going to start to grow, and we're going to make it. Give your child permission to fail. Sometimes it just doesn't work out like you would hope it would. Let's start over. Where did we get lost? Let's start from the beginning. Reinforce effort. Of course, we've said that. And create a vision of adulthood filled with choices and options. I hope I've made that emphasize that point. anytime you can empower your child to come up with their own way of doing it, or have a choice about how to do it, that is important. That really will encourage compliance, and it also will help them realize that they are in charge of these things going forward. Okay, never do something for them they can do for themselves. And I would even say, tell them why you're not going to do that for them because they can do that themselves. And I've said to my kids, you don't want to be in high school and have your mother be doing this for you. That's going to be a killer for you. No. And so just, let them do everything that they can do for themselves, and push them to try even further. Focus on what they did right, and never allow them to use ADHD or LD as an excuse. The proposal system, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if you have an older child who says, no, I want to do this, I think this is a better idea, and you're not quite sure, in this webinar, and I believe we'll have where we'll post this recording, but you ask them what they want, what's the change they're asking for, the reward they'd like to earn along with the rationale, and have them share that with you. They need to share a list of reasons why an adult might deny the proposal, a solution to overcome each challenge listed, and conditions for maintaining the change provided. So that's empowering them. You're giving them, okay, well, if you want this, you need to write this out for me. You need to make a proposal. And this is one John did with Jay. I'm not going to read through it too much. John, you might want to speak to it a little bit. But it's my only point is it's a way to empower your child and produce cooperation, moving in the right direction.
So the wonderful thing about the proposal system is it teaches self-advocacy, executive function, and problem solving. Yeah. Perhaps we'll do a proposal system webinar because we really can talk about how this can work. And many of the families that have come out of our academy really have found this to be of particular worth to them, because everything's on the table. You want a rule changed? Let's have a conversation. And if my son is willing or daughter are willing to invest in creating the proposal and bringing to me all the reasons, solutions to all the reasons they think I'm going to say no, it's a negotiation process. And what I did with this one was, he brought me his rationale, and I shared with him a couple additional concerns I had. He went back to the drawing table, found solutions to my concerns, and we gave it a shot. And it ended up being very productive because he was empowered, he was invested, and he was the agent of change. And when kids can do that, it becomes a really, really powerful mechanism. And what could be more motivating than realizing that, you can impact your environment and the rules if you can overcome the reasons the rules are there in the first place.
It's really powerful, very powerful. And that's where we want our kids to be long term. We want them to be able to advocate for what they want. Beautiful. So salt in the hay means, it's using the metaphor, you can't drag a horse to water, but you can salt the hay.
You can make them thirsty. You make the horse thirsty. And how do you make the horse thirsty? You salt the hay.
That's right. So we're gonna solve the hay by praising their efforts, praising their strengths, praising them, grateful we are that they're there. We're going to help them understand positive is come equipped with. There is a consequence on the other side of that at all. Positive, negative, anything. It's all just luck. It either worked or it didn't work, whatever. We're going to help them understand consequences. And this whole process helps with that. And we want to validate their efforts. We want them to know what a valued member of our team they are. We want to slowly give them power and control as part of this whole structure, bringing in their opinions, giving them choices, letting them have as much control as possible. But most of all, we want them to know that we love them and treat everything that they do with love and kindness and respect. So all of that will pay off in the future. And there's everything I said one at a time. So there you go. Some do's and don'ts, and I want you to check yourself this week as you go forward. Don't avoid nattering and nagging and poking the bear and pouring gas on the fire. So sometimes then that just triggers all so much. Or you're nagging. I've asked you and asked you and asked you. That's not helping. None of those words are helping me at all. So we're going to try to avoid that. All that knee jerk. We're not going to do it. We're going to know when to engage and how to not get sucked in and how to disengage. And so if you ask them to do something, you ask them the question, will you please? I need this done. And then what do you need to know? How may I help you? What details do you need from me in order to get that done? And if they start arguing, you say, I need to get you to get this done. How are you going to go about that? And how may I help you? Because you need to get this done. So don't get sucked in. A couple of more don'ts, and this is really important. Don't remove something the child has earned through hard work. I've heard some horror stories of things that people have taken away from their kids that their kids have earned, because that's not fair. Our kids, it's really hard for our kids to earn things. So please don't take something away that they've earned. Don't yell or scream or become argumentative, because you're just modeling that for your child. Don't get caught up in the details or the semantics. Just say very clearly in as clear steps as you can what you want and how that needs to look. Don't give a consequence that you can't control. We've said that already. And don't threaten a consequence that you're not ready to implement. Okay? So those are your think abouts for this week. Be consistent, follow through, recognize it is your child's job where those boundaries are. And every time you set the boundaries out further, they have to test harder again to see where they went, right? So if you say you're going to do something, please do it. Hold the boundary. Otherwise, the more you loosen, the more your kid is going to push those limits. Differentiate your disapproval of the behavior from your love of the child, and focus more on their strengths and the positive than their failures or the negative. So always positive, always positive. Okay, John, last words?
Yeah, my last words are this: if you take nothing else from this workshop today, it's making sure that you keep your kids engaged in positive, healthy ways, that you nurture their strengths and abilities, you keep things fun, and you find ways to guide on the side rather than develop and institute, a conflictual relationship. Conflict does not motivate. And then sometimes your kids are motivated to participate in conflict with you, you want to avoid the struggle to do that. You do not have to attend every argument that you are invited to. My last little tip is that, anytime the situations afford you the chance to nurture and encourage or motivate, take advantage of it. There's an event online that they want to attend, and it's a live event. Getting things done prior to that live event is the condition by which they can attend that event. And so finding ways to nurture your kids in really healthy, positive ways, and listen to them and create a structure in which you're listening to each other. I know that we are all digging in at home and learning a lot more about each other in positive ways. And we thank you so much for attending the webinar. And Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I also want to add, everybody got to use the chat box. And while you're still here, before you go, if you have any suggestions about what you would like to see John and I address in the future, please take a few minutes and type that in there. We're trying to be as absolutely responsive to you and your needs as possible. We realize that everybody has kind of been thrown into a situation that they just weren't quite prepared for, from being their age, what that's like. They got out of school 2 months early. Whoa, you know, if that had happened when I was that age, who knows what I would have been doing, and the heck I would have put my parents through. So anything that you need from us to help hold this whole thing together and move forward in positive, loving, caring ways with your child, let us know.
Liz, Ann Delgado indicated that she turned in some questions ahead of time.
She did. And I don't, let me see. I had that up a minute ago, but now I'm not going to have it. Let me see. There it is. Okay. Ann said, we wake up to get ready, and he tells me he's up, but he's not up. He's still in bed. And he tells me to get up right now. Just kind of hangs out and doesn't really get going. He does log into class on time, but he's avoiding doing the things he needs to do, like feeding the pets or eating breakfast with the family. He grazes and kind of doing his own thing. How do I get him to cooperate without getting into a power struggle? He's masterful at power struggles and arguing. That's a strength. My daughter ended up taking debate, and it just got worse, but we got off top. We could talk about things like moon landings and, you know, food shortages and things, so it wasn't always personal, and that was helpful. She started debating about other things in life. So, and you said that, Anna said that Sword told me he did a great job getting up and getting things ready when he was there. He still expects to have his electronics time and to boot, and feels unfairly threatened if I take them away. There is a disconnection in his thinking, like he forgot the past behavior. John, you want to address that?
Well, sure. You know, it's all about creating expectation and creating a construct by which, you know, you move forward. One of the reasons that he was able to do so well at SOAR was, you know, that everybody was doing the same thing, and so you lose. What you lose at home is other kids are complying, right? And he falls into the age-old, you know, kind of battle with you. That is a you know, that is a difficult topic. I will say that, you know, I've had some success creating things to argue about with kids that I don't necessarily care about, like whether or not you wear a hat in the dining hall. So that they can engage and meet that need, but ultimately, you know, I can then demonstrate that I've listened and I've heard what they've said, and I can give in, and therefore sometimes I'm going to give in, sometimes I'm not, and we engage in that conversation. I create real structure to have those conversations by, you know. So for instance, you know, I'm going to say, listen, we're going to talk about this for 5 minutes. Ultimately, you know, it's my decision what's going to happen, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. I will then respond. I'll give you one final word, and then I'll make my decision. If you agree to those terms up front, then we can discuss this. If you don't agree to those terms, then I'm just going to expect compliance. There are compliance structures that we can put into place, and I think we're going to do a compliance workshop in the near future that are less about motivating internally kids to participate and focus more on managing compliance, because you kind of move into a very different type of engagement when you're doing that. So definitely look for that webinar. And then,
and I think, John, that might be the webinar coming up on the art of negotiation, and that's going to be next Thursday. Just saying.
Yep, and so, you know, and Martha Simmons, who's a longtime SOAR. Martha, so glad that you're here with us. She, you know, she threw out the start with family meetings, question mark, absolutely. Family meetings put everybody on the same page. They're an opportunity to discuss what the expectations are going to be, kind of put it out there. But again, you know, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the motivators that are going to allow kids to want to be successful. And, you know, I love the Ross Greene quote, kids will do well if they can. And so, you know, and by the way, Anna, if you are welcome. And by the way, all of you are welcome to engage Liz in personal, you know, one-on-one time. She's available to you to kind of talk through some of these thoughts and ideas and just brainstorm with you different solutions that might be in place. Another question was asked, what would be some motivators to get kids to do schoolwork at home during the shelter in place? And you know, that is difficult, but again, you might, if your school has created consequences or you have created consequences for both achieving the schoolwork and what happens if you don't achieve the schoolwork, you know, having those conversations, just very much all the things that we've discussed in this webinar, try some of those things, and then, you know, have a discussion about what, if this, then what? If you accomplish it, this is what's available. If you don't accomplish it, this is what is no longer available.
And I'm looking at Martha. Martha also submitted a question ahead, and she said she's having trouble getting her teenager outside. That, you know, to get outside or do anything outside, he wants to just be on the internet or be on technology or whatever. And, you know, so one thought there would just say, you know, we're all outside from here to here. We're all going outside. You're going to have to figure something out. The house is closed.
You know, I love that. The door is locked. The house is closed. We're outside.
Yeah.
Another trick that you can use there is, you know, you can basically say, hey, listen, we need to make sure that in your free time, you're accomplishing these 4 things. You've got free time. You've got social time. You've got intellectual play, and then you've got physical play. And so at least a portion of your day has to be involved in some type of physical play. And if you want the other 3, then you have to have the physical play.
Balanced, be balanced. That's right. How to help our children be balanced. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for
one last one. We've got the last question we're going to answer.
Okay.
How do you manage ADHD children and other children who aren't? And my answer is almost all the tools and techniques that you use for our kids are going to work really well for everybody. The difference that my ADHD children require from me is I have to follow up more. I have to watch them more closely. I have to have just a little tighter structure in place. And when they say to me that's not fair, then my answer to them is, I engage with you in ways that I believe is going to help you be the most successful. And I don't ask everybody else, you know, their opinion about what that might be. Just like I don't think you want me asking them about the opinion about what is best for me to work with you. So, you know, try these things, have fun with them, call Liz, email Liz, you can email me. We're looking forward to being in this with you. My sleeves are rolled up as we speak. We're in it to win it.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any special requests for webinars in the future, please do email me or John or let us know, because we're happy to do it. We're going to have 2 a week all through April and possibly all through May as well. So look forward to having you join us again. Take care.